Hello everyone. I came across an article from Bloomberg on de-dollarization with a rather bold title: Turkey looks to ditch dollar. For a major Western publication, this language is unusual, but as I went through the article, I thought I should share it with you. It appears there can be a major advance in de-dollarization and a push to dethrone US dollar as a reserve currency. This time the focus is on Turkey and unsurprisingly on Russia. We have seen some news on de-dollarization from Saudis, Iran, China. But Turkey is a very different case in my opinion. Turkey is a classic example of why US dollar as a reserve currency eventually will be abandoned. It shows a main weakness of any national currency as a world reserve currency, not just US dollar. Let's talk about why it is different and what it means for the US dollar, gold and silver. Latest meetings held between Turkey's president and Russian Putin in Russian resort city Sochi apparently produced some bilateral agreements that will have long-term ramifications. But first, let's take a look at some historic facts about Turkey, US, Russia, EU, all the way back to the Cuban Missile Crisis of the 60s, and then we will move back to the conversation on de-dollarization. Historic background will be important to understand importance of Turkish shift towards the East. Turkey has been in the West's and especially United States sphere of influence since the 50s. It has become a member state of NATO and houses major US military bases. Cuban crisis in 60s started with this country, where Turkey was the major catalyst of the events that almost pushed the world to the brink of the nuclear conflict. Quick reminder of the events. US secretly deployed nuclear weapons in Turkey, putting major part of USSR under the threat of attack. That didn't sit well with Moscow, and then Russian premier decided to deploy tactical nukes in Cuba, putting short-range Russian nuclear arsenal within short striking distance to US East Coast in Washington. This is a fascinating story on its own, with camouflaged ship cargo of Russian nukes and US naval blockade. But it's a story for another time. Long story short, as soon as US found out, US military operation was initiated with Russians and Cubans prepared to all-out hot confrontation. At the last minute, hostilities were averted, and the world barely avoided a nuclear conflict. This shows the importance of Turkey as an ally to US and the level of close connections between Turkey and US. Does this remind anyone of something similar? Like US instigating a coup against a Russian-supported puppet regime in Ukraine and replacing it with US puppet planning to expand NATO bases all the way to the walls of Moscow? In Cuban crisis, casualties were avoided. Today we are looking at a humanitarian crisis with innocent Ukrainians slaughtered en masse. Today, Turkey allows US to project its military power all over the Middle East and even as far as China, India, Iran, Afghanistan, Russia and other critical players in the region. It also allows US to control by proxy international maritime movement between Mediterranean and Black Sea. Basically, if you want to trade or move your military vessels in and out of the Black Sea, you have to have a blessing from Turkey. All of this makes Turkey a key ally for US and the Western world to support their military and political ambitions. Importance of Turkey as strategic crossroads goes back to the time of Roman Empire, with Istanbul or Constantinople being military, economic and political center of the biggest empire in history. Well, besides Mongolian. But despite the important role as a military partner of the West in the region, Turkey never became a member of the EU, even though it made multiple attempts to join. That allowed it to keep some political independence, as compared to the rest of the countries that currently are part of the European Union. The fact that Turkey held EU candidate state status for decades, while most of the former Soviet states became full members, was a constant source of unhappiness in Ankara. Maybe what we see in its drive to establish close ties and influence within the region is a part of that desire to take a revanche for West's policy to limit Turkey's economic growth? Or maybe a history of US trying to interfere with internal affairs in Turkey by encouraging opposition to the current Turkey president? US is providing protection and immunity for Erdogan's opponent, who reportedly orchestrated a failed coup in 2016. It was suggested that US was behind that coup. Well, that last one is just a conspiracy theory. US denied it. Besides, US would never try to replace opposing political regimes or leaders, except maybe in Venezuela, Iran, China, Panama, Ukraine and many more countries. In any case, Turkey is in the middle of all political wrangling in the region and is trying to assert itself as a regional power. In light of European Union apparent unwillingness to accept Turkey, Turkish government is pivoting towards establishing closer economic ties with the East. Reuters summarized the Turkey's complex position by following: although Turkey has criticized the Russian invasion and provided Ukraine with arms, it has broken with Western allies by not imposing sanctions on Russia. That careful balance reflects the complexity of its ties with Russia, ranging from close cooperation on energy supplies to military competition in Syria, Libya, and Azerbaijan. So as we can see, Turkey is an important player in the region where interests of many countries collide. Turkey depends on US military support and money for hosting military bases, but also needs Russian energy, trade and political cooperation in the region. Back to the latest meeting between Erdogan and Putin. We might add that the frequency of these meetings increased dramatically. This was a second meeting between two heads of the states in 2 weeks. In the latest meetings, sides agreed to boost bilateral trade to a $100 billion equivalent a year in the near future. It is almost triple from the current levels. In 2021, Russia's exports to Turkey were around $29 billion, against $5 billion of Turkey's to Russia. But here is an interesting part. To get to those levels, Russia needs to triple its trade with Turkey, while Turkey needs to boost its exports to Russia by a lot to achieve a parity. Details of the deal are still unclear and are not publicly announced, but we can make some educated guesses. What does Russia produce? Energy, commodities, agricultural products and weapons. Russia is building new nuclear plant in Turkey that will supply 10% of the domestic energy consumption and will maintain it for decades. It supplies 40% of Turkey's natural gas needs. It's Turkey's major supplier of grains. There are talks about joint production of military jets and submarines, but I do not see this venture to outpace volumes generated by US military-industrial complex, so there must be something else to get Russian side to $100 billion mark. And there is another question. How much of that can Turkey absorb? Now to Turkey's exports to Russia. Turkey is not a major producer of anything on a big scale. Its main industry is tourism, where Russians supply almost 20% of revenue and trade. Turkey produces drones that are used to kill Russians in Ukraine, but that doesn't stop Russia from expanding its trade relationships with Turkey. Just a curious side of world politics and trade. But back to the topic. To get Turkey's exports to Russia into a 100 billion neighborhood, Russia will have to mandate all of its population to switch to diets of Turkish pistachios or cherries exclusively, and maybe impose a mandatory vacation in Anatolia every other month. Aside from these measures, Turkey will have to come up with something Russia needs, and it has to be something of a scale. So what does Turkey has to offer that Russia might need? As you might have guessed by now, it's location, location, location. What makes Turkey so important to US and West, makes it very valuable to Russians as well. Turkey has a strategic trade location. Given the sanctions by EU and US, plus Russian pivot towards Middle East, Africa and Asia, Turkey can offer Russians a new avenue to trade. After the latest meeting between Erdogan and Putin, Washington Post reported, a Russian proposal intercepted ahead of the meeting and shared with the Washington Post by Ukrainian intelligence, or more likely US intelligence, called for Erdogan's government to permit Russia to buy stakes in Turkish oil refineries, terminals and reservoirs, a move that economists say could help disguise the origin of its exports after the European Union's oil embargo kicks in fully next year. Russia also requested that several state-owned Turkish banks allow correspondent accounts for Russia's biggest banks, which economists and sanctions experts say would be a flagrant breach of Western sanctions, and that Russian industrial producers be allowed to operate out of free economic zones in Turkey. Now we can see why Turkey was included into every conversation in the region. From Syria, Iran and Azerbaijan to Ukrainian grain exports. Turkey is becoming a major partner for Russia in its efforts to shed dependency on EU and the West. If Russia can shift its trade flows to Turkey, that 100 billion mark can be met and exceeded. Europe's loss can be a big win for Turkey. By the way, it's not just Russia. China is also diversifying its dependence on Western-controlled trade avenues. So as we can see, Turkey is becoming a major player in international trade. It's time to return to de-dollarization and our conversation about reserve currency. Big news was that a portion of the trade between Russia and Turkey will be conducted in national currencies. An even established practice of pricing in US dollars will be dropped in favor of pricing in local currencies. Bloomberg, in its original article I have mentioned in the beginning of this video, reports. Turkey's President Erdogan will discuss paying for Russian energy imports with currencies other than the US dollar when he meets his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, in Tehran on Tuesday, according to Turkish officials familiar with the matter. The two countries have been working on a proposal for local currency trade payments, including for energy deals, a move that would help the government in Ankara slow the decline in its sovereign reserves, the officials said. This is a monumental change. Currently, European countries are paying for Russian energy in euro with an instant conversion to rubles through one of the Russian banks. So the whole scheme is technically still done in euro. Yes, that forces EU to support Russian currency against their will, but in a bigger picture, for all that noise, Russian energy and commodities are priced and traded in dollar or euro. Transition to bilateral agreements. priced in local currencies, is a completely different story. It bypasses US financial control completely. Now, Turkey is not a pioneer in this movement away from the dollar. We have seen trade between China and Russia nominated in yuan for a while, plus some news from India with more and more trades done in Russian currency, completely bypassing dollar sphere. But India and China are not as politically dependent on US as Turkey. China and India conducted an independent of US foreign policy for decades. Turkey, on the other hand, has been a faithful ally of the West and was trying to integrate into the Western society for decades. From military cooperation to economic and political integration. A shift from a major ally of the US and the West towards the East is very important. China, India, Iran, Russia and other countries in the region can offer much more to Turkey than US and EU in a long run. Becoming a crucial trade hub for China, India, Middle East and Russia is a big chance for Turkey. Also, given the number of sanctions US has imposed on Turkey in the last decade, that shift can only accelerate. Yes, US has sanctioned Turkey as well in the last decade, so Turkey is a member of a fast-growing club of countries where US used its economic power to impose its political interests. US was not investing into development of Turkish economy, quite the opposite, while China and Russia are willing to pour money and resources to elevate Turkey to a regional powerhouse. It is hard to say whether Turkey's actions are a part of some elaborate scheme by US or a genuine independent politics by Turkey. But if it's not, it clearly shows a break from US policy guidelines and towards politics that favor national economic interests of Turkey above NATO allegiances. But as promised in the beginning of the video, let's talk about why example of Turkey is a classic example of why US dollar as a reserve currency eventually will be abandoned. Again, it's not something unique to the dollar. Any national currency would represent the same challenge to the world trade. As we know, Turkey is struggling to contain national currency plunge. During the last couple of years, Turkey's main source of hard currency, tourism, was hit really hard. As a result, foreign currency reserves are drained. Turkey needs US dollars to buy Russian energy and services, and it puts a major pressure on Turkish economy. Now, if instead of US dollars Turkey could use its sovereign currency, would that make its life much easier? That's why example of current predicament of Turkey with falling national currency and a need to pay for imports with US dollar, which is appreciating in value, is a classic example of why use of a foreign currency to service national economic needs is doomed. Given alternatives, most players will choose sovereign currencies over US dollar as a reserve currency. The world is actively looking for a replacement to the US dollar, and as more and more players establish alternative arrangements, the need in US dollars will slowly but surely vanish. Dollar is not likely to lose its reserve status tomorrow, so I am using time we have left and current strength in US dollar to buy some assets like gold and silver. If real estate comes down, I will invest into income producing property. If dollar declines, everything you see will go up in price in dollar terms. See example of Japan, where gold is up 20% since the beginning of the year due to decline in yen. I am not a financial advisor. This is what I am doing for my portfolio, and you will have to do your own research to find the solution that works best for you. I also add to my cash position in case market drops some more. I think Turkey is an interesting case to follow. I am sure we will hear more news from Russia-Turkey and China-Turkey arrangements. I will keep you updated as information becomes available. Thank you for watching. If you like this topic, please subscribe and like. Also, I recently posted another video on de-dollarization and oil wars between Russia and the West. You can check it out here. Until next time.